13. Congressman Barr, welcome. We appreciate you being here.
Good to be with you, Bill.
You come in encouraged by some polling indicating you're leading in the race for the Republican nomination. Still, a lot of people are undecided. And what will you say to try to close the deal?
Well, our campaign is surging, and there's a reason for that. There's several reasons for that. First of all, unlike my opponents, I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually working with this president to advance this agenda. A lot of these other politicians like to talk about supporting President Trump. I'm actually doing it every single day and served as the chairman of President Trump's campaign in Kentucky in 2024. That's why in a rally in Kentucky just a few weeks ago, President Trump said I was a warrior for this agenda and had been with him all the way. I've been with them all the way on delivering the largest tax cuts in American history, unleashing American energy dominance, rebuilding our military so that we can take out the Iranian threat and the prospect of a nuclear Iran. And yes, in securing the southern border, record funding for immigration enforcement. I think the voters, the Republican voters, see that.
Yet, Congressman, the president has not chosen a candidate in the race. He has not endorsed or, laid his foot on the scale at this point. He's said some kind things about you, but he also talked about other candidates.
Well, I think the fact that he said that I have been a warrior for him and all the way with him, I think does speak volumes. But, I think the other reasons why Republican voters in Kentucky are starting to gravitate towards me, previously undecided Republicans are saying, you know what, we need to nominate Congressman Andy Barr, is number one, because I'm the only candidate in this race with an actual record of delivering. I'm doing the job right now. I have experience. I don't have a learning curve. I have a record of delivering, whether it's been on the Financial Services Committee, where I wrote major pieces of the legislation rolling back burdensome regulations on our community banks, whether it was leading the fight in court, defending President Trump's legal authority to build the wall during his first term, whether it was the very first veto of Joe Biden's failed presidency. That was my bill to block woke environmentalists and these ESG mandates that politicized Americans' retirement. And then just in terms of delivering for Kentucky, I mean, I've proven that over and over again, and people appreciate that. And Bill, one final thing, one factor that is really separating me apart from these other candidates is that Republicans want to win. They don't want Chuck Schumer. They don't want Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren in charge of the United States Senate. And they know that I'm battle-tested in a swing district. I flipped a Democratic seat in Congress to a Republican seat. And despite Nancy Pelosi and her allies spending millions of dollars over the years to defeat me, I defeated them. So I'm the proven winner.
Do you ever disagree with President Trump?
Well, I think President Trump would tell you himself that I've been a warrior and supporting his agenda. And so.
But do you ever disagree with him? And if you did, would you tell him so?
Well, of course I would. Of course I would. My responsibility is to represent the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It just happens to be my view that the policies of this administration are helping Kentucky. For example, this president is committed to opening up markets and level the playing field in international trade so that we can export Kentucky bourbon into places like India. It just so happens that this administration's energy dominance strategy is good for Kentucky. This is the most pro-coal president in American history, and I'm working with Secretary Howard Lutnick and Chris Wright and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin and Doug Burgum, who leads President Trump's National Energy Dominance Council, to promote policies that will put our coal miners back to work and position Kentucky to power the technologies of the future.
You think coal can come back in Kentucky? The workforce is about 3,600 right now statewide.
Yeah, exactly. And we've lost 15,000 direct coal mining jobs since the Obama and Biden war on coal. And electricity rates in Kentucky, since we've prematurely retired our coal-fired power fleet in this country, have spiked for Kentuckians 59%. So I want to work with this administration. Will it be difficult? Yes, because of the regulatory uncertainty of future climate alarmist administrations. And so I have produced a plan. I rolled it out in coal country in Harlan County. I've talked about it a lot in the western Kentucky coal fields. And this plan is a plan to position Kentucky not only to bring back Kentucky coal jobs, but to power and attract to the Commonwealth the jobs of the future, artificial intelligence and those technology jobs that require immense amount of electricity.
You use the term climate alarmist. Do you have concerns about climate change?
I think climate change is something that should be resolved the American way or solved the American way. And the way to solve climate change is through innovation and technology. It's not through more pages of federal regulations that put the United States at a competitive disadvantage. Bill, the People's Republic of China they are building 2 new coal-fired power plants every single week. They share the same planet that we do, but we have better technology. We have superior, lower emission coal-fired electricity generation capabilities, and yet we're not using that. And why is this important? Because precisely at the time where we have retired all of this coal-fired power in this country, we're seeing electricity demand spike because of this race for AI dominance. And this has enormous national security implications because artificial intelligence will improve productivity, it will produce growth, and the country that is dominant in AI will set the rules for artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence requires immense amount of dispatchable baseload power. Coal and nuclear are the best forms of baseload power. Guess what Kentucky has? We have billions of tons of unrecovered coal, and we have a burgeoning nuclear industry in the far west that I want to represent as well.
We find ourselves in a major military conflict right now with Iran, at least in the short term. We know gasoline prices have spiked. That is increasing some other prices. We have lost 2 Kentuckians in the war so far. What are your thoughts on the U.S. and Israeli actions in the Middle East?
Well, I fully support this president's decision to end, not start, end a 47-year war against the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, not just defending our allies against a regime that has destabilized the Middle East, but a regime that chants death to America, responsible for thousands of American lives lost over 5 decades, starting with the embassy in Tehran and the hostages in 1979 to the Marine barracks in Beirut in the early 80s, the USS Cole, thousands of American soldiers killed in Iraq by Shiite militias supported by Iran, and of course October 7th, the atrocities. And so not only is this president restoring maximum pressure, but is finally doing what needed to be done, which is to decapitate the leadership, to degrade the military capabilities of the regime, to make sure not only that we are defending against attacks from the regime, but degrading the defense industrial base so that they can't reconstitute those capabilities. So this has been a remarkable success. Over 12,300 targets have been successfully taken out inside Iran. These are military targets, ballistic missiles, launchers, the Air Force, the Navy. Over 155 Iranian naval vessels are at the bottom of the Persian Gulf or the Indian Ocean. So this has been a remarkable success, and now the military is going after the defense industrial base so that they can't reconstitute. The nuclear infrastructure is buried. And finally, there's work being done to secure, finally, in the last phase of this Operation Epic Fury, secure the Strait of Hormuz to settle the global energy markets.
You voted on a resolution saying that the president does not need congressional approval to do what he's doing at this point. Is there a point where he would need that?
Well, yes, and he would under the War Powers Act, but the president has acted in conformity with the War Powers Act, consulted with Congress, given the notification to Congress, consulted with the Gang of Eight, consulted with members of Congress, both sides of the aisle. And remember, the president has the commander-in-chief power to protect our forward deployed troops and to keep the American people safe by degrading the military capabilities of the Iranian regime, decapitating its leadership, destroying and obliterating the nuclear infrastructure of that rogue weapon state. this commander-in-chief is making the world and our country a safer place.
Do you believe this all ends soon?
I think it does, as the president said in his address to the nation the other night. But there are a final phase to be completed, and that is securing the